Maseches Chagiga, and we learned about those that are exempt. We said everyone is obligated in Re'iyah, and we translated Re'iyah as Rashi translates it, which is that everyone is obligated in Re'iyas Kol Zechorcha, which is the mitzvah that all males have a mitzvah to be in the Azara, to be in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, and to be seen. Yero'eh Kol Zechorcha. And the Mishnah mentioned many cases that people are exempt. We said a cherish shaitiv a katan. Cherish is someone who's well, literally cherish means deaf, but Gemara will show that it refers to someone who's deaf mute. And a shaita is someone who's a fool, a katan. And the Mishnah will soon say what type of katan are we referring to that is exempt from this re'iyah, which is being in the traveling to the Azara, traveling to the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the Mishnah mentioned the tumtum and androgynous, which are also exempt, and they were people who it's unclear if they're a male or a female. And the nashim, women are exempt. Avadim she'enim mishachrarim, slaves that are not freed. And we had a whole discussion, of course, if a slave is freed, what would they be obligated? Because they would be considered a ger, a convert. And
Rabbi,
a convert, yes.
I just bought the Chagiga last night, the PDF, and
Yes.
it looks like the first Mishnah is one may irrigate a field that requires irrigation.
Yeah, so let me tell you what happened. The Koren put Moyed Katan and Chagiga in the same volume, in their large volume. So you actually paid only $10 and you got two Masechtas, not one.
Okay.
And it starts with a Masechta called Moyed Katan.
Okay.
And you really need to go to page 200 and something, and you'll find the beginning of Tractate Chagiga. But you start on page 1, you should be starting on page like 200 or something.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And because you saved money because now you got two Masechtas at the same price.
I'm glad I asked because I would have been searching through 200 pages till I got to the right page.
Maybe that would have been good.
You would have written a nasty note to them.
Uh-huh. So so you just got there might be a table of contents or something. Should be able to find something. Yeah. But okay. So the Mishnah continued to mention that slaves that are not freed are exempt. Now, what happens if a person has a slave that is, and then he frees him? So then the slave, we're talking about an Eved Kanani, a non-Jewish slave. But once he's freed from his master, now he becomes a convert, a full-fledged convert. And once he's a convert, a ger, he would seemingly be chayiv. At least our Mishnah implies that. I mentioned to you that it's not so simple, because you need to own land in order to be chayiv, in order to have to go to the Beis HaMikdash. And it has to do with a pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'lo yachmoid ishas artzecha." No one is going to desire your land. That means you need to own land. At least the Gemara understands that you need to own land in order to be chayiv to come to the Beis HaMikdash. So it would seem that a ger maybe would be exempt because they don't have land in Eretz Yisrael. They don't have a portion. But we gave some examples yesterday.
Oh, you get in? Yes. Oh, it's a process.
Okay. Ben, yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking, so if you're not exempt, you can still go to the Beit HaMikdash if you want to visit.
If you're exempt, you're wondering if someone is exempt, would they be allowed to go to the Beis HaMikdash?
Yeah.
Seemingly, yes. But there is a discussion, there is question that what happens if you go to the Beis Hamikdash, but you don't bring a carbon? And it does say, "V'lo yera'u panai reikam."
Yeah.
You can't see my. They should not see my face empty-handed.
Wasn't it?
So, yes,
Yeah.
Zev.
Oh, you know,
What?
I had to try it a few times in the last
Oh.
year when I get in. I have some remarks on your last year. Can I say them now?
Oh, you had some ha'aras. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. So Ben was asking about a person going to the Beis Hamikdash and he's not obligated, but so it deserves to be looked into. Is there going to be an issue of the lo yero panai reikam? If they don't bring a carbon, would they be transgressing that sin? Probably not, but it has to be looked into. I know there's a minchas chinuch that there's you have to go through that and just see, because I know there's discussion about this.
Can they go not on a holiday when you don't have to bring a korban?
Up to a certain place, right? Up to a certain place, it seemingly you could go. Yeah,
Okay.
Ezras Yisrael for the Yisraelim, Ezras Nashim for the women, Ezras Kayanim for the there's a certain
Okay,
boundary.
thank you.
Okay. Yes, Reb Zev.
Yeah, okay. Two was on Yitzchok.
On Yisro.
Yeah, since you said about Yitzchok, well, let's show. When they came to eat lechem, Koch, Zigay Israel, Moshe Aaron, always lechem in his old Levi. That's where the dish originates from, the Hasidic dish.
Interesting. Okay.
Which you're very familiar with that, but the rabbi's dish originates from that.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now
Okay.
number Yitzchok. Yitzchok has 7 names.
Uh-huh.
Yeser, Keni, Hovav, Hever, Reuel, Putiel. Keni is one of his names. Now, all the descendants are called Keni, but some were Jewish, some were not.
Uh-huh.
The grandchildren, all those women that Moshe saved at the well, only Zipporah converted, the others remained Shiksas. So Yitzchok had a lot of descendants who were not Jewish. They were all called Keni because of him.
Uh-huh.
So the Keni settled in Yericho had some Jewish Kenis and some not.
Interesting. Do you have a source for this? Do you have a source? Or you're just using logic?
Plain logic here. Because
logic.
Only Zipporah converted, the other girls didn't. And also, Yisro may have had some children before he converted. They're all called Keni because of him. So
okay, interesting.
So this was Shaul said that I'm sparing you because of Yisro who did Chesed to our forefathers.
Interesting.
He couldn't say because you are one of us Jews, but not, like I said, not all of them were Jewish.
So definitely, it sounds like an interesting thought. I mean, the fact that it does say he went back home, Lagayer b'nei mishpachtoi, means that he wanted to be Magayer b'nei mishpachtoi, and maybe he wasn't successful. So that's a thought. But it's definitely something to look into. It does sound like a good answer. It sounds like a good answer.
Something. When we went to Eretz Yisrael, this was years ago, they took us up to the top of a mountain someplace where they had a very elaborate tomb. And they said this was Yisro's tomb. They actually have a stone thing where his footprint was, or something where he stepped in the stone. I don't know what Maisa they came up with. But we were up there, and there's a caver for Yisro. And it's not Jewish. It's whatever they follow. But it's in Eretz Yisrael.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So that's what Shaul said. I'm sparing you because you are Yisro's descendants who did Chesed for our forefathers.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
So that's what Shaul said. I'm sparing you.
Sparing you. Yeah, I hear. Okay. Yeah.
Because you are Yitzchok's
His
descendants
descendants.
who did first of our forefathers.
Right.
Now, let's talk about Eob. Eob, not only because he's quiet, but he had an opportunity to sway the decision in favor of the Eden. Because Yitzchok and Bilam were 1-1. He kept quiet and left it as 1-1, and then Paro chose Bilam. Bilam's advice. If Eob had spoken up, he could have made it 2-1 and saved all those Jewish babies.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you're saying it's more than just not protesting.
Right.
It's the fact that he could have made a majority. Does it say that anywhere, or is that also your logic?
Again, it's my logic.
Okay. Very nice. Very
He
nice.
had an opportunity to make it 2-1, and he didn't.
Okay. All right. Very nice.
I just wanted to say, Yitzchok never went into Israel, so whatever stone it is, it came from somewhere else.
Oh,
He left before they went into Israel.
Maybe he came back later. I don't know. I'm just saying.
maybe
this is
he
what
had.
they were
He
showing to us.
He might have paid for a burial in Israel. Anyway.
Rabbi,
Yes, Moshe.
didn't Yitro have wasn't he involved with Paro at some point? I think he didn't go into Israel, but he was involved with Paro.
Early
Yeah,
on.
before, way earlier. Yeah, we were talking about that much earlier.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So the Mishnah had mentioned about avodim. So I mentioned this issue of the fact that if they don't have land, then it would seem, at least from the Gemara, there's a Gemara Pesachim that mentions that they're exempt. If someone doesn't have land, there's also Yerushalmi that mentions this idea that if someone doesn't have land, they're exempt from Re'iyah. But the Mishnah doesn't seem to deal with that. The Mishnah doesn't exempt Gerim, and it doesn't exempt someone who's a slave that's freed. And that does seem to be a little surprising. However, it's not a problem, because there are many examples how a ger could own land. The simple example of owning land would be he buys land from a Jew, but that doesn't work, because if you buy land for a Jew, the land can't be sold permanently. So if you buy land from a Jew, that would not make you someone who owns land in Eretz Yisrael, because the land is going to be returning to its original owner, and therefore you're not really called someone who has land in Eretz Yisrael. So there is a way to own land, and that is if you buy a bias in a Batei Orei Chaima, if you buy a house in a walled city and the person doesn't redeem it within a year, then you actually own that forever. So that would be an example of being able to own land. And the other option would be marrying a Yisraelis, marrying a regular Jew. If a ger marries a Yoyrest, he wouldn't have land. But if he marries a regular Jew that she inherited her father's land, and there was no boys, so she actually inherited the land, that would be an example of where he could inherit it from his wife, and then he would own land, and he would be obligated in going to Eretz Yisrael to be Oila Regel. Now, and that would be a reason why avodim that are freed, or gerim, would be obligated in Re'iyah, because there are cases where they could own land. However, I should also mention that the Rambam doesn't hold of this issue. The Rambam holds that this must be a machlokes. Somehow the Rambam doesn't bring this law that you're exempt from being oila regel if you don't own land. The Rambam doesn't bring this halacha, even though it's brought in Gemara, it's brought in Yerushalmi, but the Rambam doesn't bring it. And the commentaries all grapple with why is it that the Rambam doesn't bring this law, and they come up with different explanations having to do with the fact that maybe there's a machlokes about it, and the halacha doesn't follow it. So there's definitely an opinion that holds that you don't have to own land, and according to that, it's not a question in the first place. Our Mishnah mentions avodim she'einam meshuchrorim, but if it was an eved meshuchrer, according to the Rambam, is no problem for sure. A ger is definitely going to be chayiv in oila regel. Then the Mishnah gave examples of a chiger, lame, blind, sick, elderly, person who can't walk on his barefoot, and who is considered a katan. The Mishnah now asks. So there's katanim, there's youth that are exempt, and there's youth that are going to be obligated. So what is the katan that is exempt? He can't ride on his father's shoulders. According to Beis Shammai, according to Beis Hillel. According to Beis Hillel, if he can't walk holding his father's hand from Yerushalayim to Har HaBayis. Now, it is interesting that it mentions Har HaBayis. He can't walk from Yerushalayim to Har HaBayis, to the mountain. What about to the Azara? That's the main thing. You're not really Yaitza. You don't fulfill the obligation of going to Har HaBayis. You need to go to the Azara. You need to go to the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash to be Yaitza, to fulfill the Oila Regel. Going to the mountain, you're not really fulfilling the obligation. The commentaries discuss that as well, and it has to do with the well, there are different explanations, but basically could be that because the mountain is the steepest part. So that's the main issue, that the katan has to be able to walk up that steep mountain. That would be, once he can do that, then going from the Har HaBayis to the Azara, that would be no big deal. So it's the main issue is that can he walk from Yerushalayim to Har HaBayis? Can he walk up that steep mountain? That would be proving that he would be obligated in being Oila Regel. Another explanation is, according to halacha, you should the Har HaBayis, the Azara can be extended to the whole Har HaBayis. So, because in potential it could be extended to the whole Har HaBayis, so the only obligation, the way to know if a katan, if the child is obligated to be Oila Regel, is if he could at least make it to the top of Har HaBayis, even if it's not the actual place of the Beis Hamikdash, but at least he's making it to Har HaBayis. That would make him already obligated in being Oila Regel. So again, what we've just learned is that a child is possibly obligated in being Oila Regel, either because not because, but if the child that would be obligated would either follow Beis Hillel or Beis Shammai, that either they ride on their father's shoulders. That they could do that, they're obligated, or according to Beis Hillel, as long as they could walk up holding their father's hand, they could walk to the Har HaBayis. They would be from Yerushalayim. That would be a sign that they're obligated in being Oila Regel, going up to the Beis Hamikdash for the 3 holidays. Now the Mishnah gave a pasuk for Beis Hillel, and Beis Hillel brought a pasuk that says Shalish Regalim, 3 regalim that you have to be Oila Regel, you have to be able to walk. And that, of course, is talking about the biblical obligation. But the way Rashi explains it is the child is going to be obligated rabbinically only in a case where the adult would be obligated. And the adult would be obligated if he could walk. So therefore, and if he can't walk, then he would be exempt. So therefore, a child that can't walk would be exempt even rabbinically, but if he could walk, then he would be obligated midrabanan from the rabbinic law. There would be, which would be called chinuch, the mitzvah of education. So the child would be obligated in going to be Oila Regel. He's able to walk, holding his father's hand, and that would be the mitzvah of chinuch, of education. And the Mishnah ended off talking about Re'iyah and Chagiga. Re'iyah has to be either be 2 kesef and Chagiga 1 kesef, according to the opinion of Beis Shammai. According to Beis Hillel, it's the exact opposite. The Re'iyah would be 1 kesef and the Chagiga would be 2 kesef. What is the Re'iyah? What is the Chagiga? These are 2 sacrifices. Re'iyah means the burnt sacrifice, Oilas Re'iyah. Chagiga means the Shalmei Chagiga, the peace offering of the Chagiga. And these 2 offerings, they would be according to the different opinions here, they would have this minimum amount that they have to be worth. The way we translated Re'iyah in the beginning, I kept saying this is the way Rashi learns. The reason I kept saying that is because Tosfos argues. Now, the reason why Tosfos argues on Rashi, he brings a number of proofs, is what does it mean when you normally say the word Re'iyah? Seeing, appearing. What does Re'iyah refer to? And Tosfos brings many sources that Re'iyah means the sacrifice called the Oilas Re'iyah, the burnt offering of the appearance. That meaning that you're not allowed to appear empty-handed. Because you're not allowed to appear empty-handed, you need to bring a korban when you come. And that korban would be called the Oilas Re'iyah. That was a burnt offering, and it was called the burnt offering of appearance. Now, if the meaning of the word Re'iyah means this korban, so Tosfos is a little surprised that the beginning part of the Mishnah would start with everyone's chayiv in Re'iyah, and Re'iyah means going up to be oile regel, yeira'eh kol zechorcha. We have to, all males should be seen in the Azara, in the Beis Hamikdash. And in the end of the Mishnah, it uses the same word, and it refers to the oila, the sacrifice. What does Re'iyah mean? And why does the Mishnah jump from one Re'iyah in the beginning to the end Re'iyah to the other Re'iyah in the end? Now, interestingly enough, Rashi seems to be bothered a little by this. And Rashi brings in, when he talks about Beis Shammai says Re'iyah shtei kesef, he says a gadol habal lehirois, a adult that comes to be seen, tzarech lahavi oila, he has to bring an oila. So Rashi comes through he makes a whole statement over here that there is a korban called the oilas re'iyah. So in other words, he's clarifying that the Mishnah in the beginning was talking about one type of re'iyah, and now we're talking about another re'iyah, which obviously is not the most smooth reading Mishnah, because it would be nice if it was, equal. The term re'iyah meant one thing, but Rashi seems to be explaining the fact that we're talking about a gadol, an adult that comes to be seen in the Beis Hamikdash has to bring a korban. What is he saying? What does he mean to say by that? That a child would not bring a korban. An adult that comes would have to bring a korban. A child would not bring a korban. Now, if you think about it that way, what Rashi is hinting to us is, he's explaining himself. Why in the beginning of the Mishnah do I translate re'iyah to mean oila regel, to mean going up to the Beis Hamikdash and not bringing a korban? You could translate it very well that the re'iyah in the first part of the Mishnah would seemingly fit very well with saying it means bringing a korban. Everyone is obligated to bring a korban oilas re'iyah. Everyone's obligated. Akol chayavin bere'iyah. You could translate the Mishnah this way. In fact, Tosfos does. He translates it both. Re'iyah to be oila regel and to bring a korban oilas re'iyah, except for the following people: Cheresh, Shaita, Katan, Tumtum, Andre. All these people, they're exempt from bringing the sacrifice. So you could learn the Mishnah that way. Why does Rashi not want to learn the Mishnah that way? Well, think about it. Does a child bring a korban?
How? A child doesn't own anything to bring a korban.
Well, what do you mean doesn't own anything? The father.
It's either his father's or it's not his.
His father they could give a gift. A child is kaina, he's not makna. The child could bring a carbon. Someone could give it to him.
I don't know how.
But the thing, what do you mean? A child could be
A
kaina.
child is not possible to own property.
Oh, property. So now you're getting back.
Property. A child does not own anything.
No, that's not so true. A child can't be makna. Like if you give your child a lulav and esrog to shake, he could fulfill the mitzvah. The problem is he can't give it back to you. So he could be koine.
Why can't he give it back to you?
Because he can be koine because it's das acheres makna. You could give it to him because it's called das acheres makna loy. Another das could be makna something to him. But he can't give it back to you because he's not a das acheres to be makna. He doesn't have das to give, and he doesn't have this das acheres. But basically,
same thing here.
Very similar. but the point is that can a child bring a carbon? So Rashi says very clearly, how could it bring a carbon? If he's not obligated in a carbon, a child doesn't bring a carbon oila. It's not obligated in a carbon, so that would be called chulin lazara. You'd be bringing mundane things to this as a sacrifice. The child's not obligated in this carbon, so you can't go and bring a carbon. You're going to say chinuch, but chinuch, rabbinic law. I mean, that would be a rabbinic type of thing. But so biblically, he's exempt. He doesn't
Mary
bring a carbon.
May have had a little lamb, but she can't bring it into the azara.
So Rashi is giving us a little explanation here. So let me just summarize what I just said. The Mishnah says clearly that a katan is obligated in re'iyah if he reaches a certain level, if he reaches a certain age. What age is a child obligated in re'iyah? He's obligated if he can hold his father's hand, if he can walk, if he can sit on his father's shoulders. He's chayiv in re'iyah. Oh, really? A child is chayiv in re'iyah? What does re'iyah mean? Does it mean bring a carbon re'iyah? It can't. A child can't bring a carbon re'iyah. So if the Mishnah is talking about re'iyah, and it's talking about a child being exempt, and some children are not exempt, some children are, it depends on what stage they're in. So it obviously is talking about going up to the Beis Hamikdash. It has to be, because a child can't bring a carbon. So therefore, Rashi learns the beginning part of re'iyah when it says in the beginning part of the Mishnah, re'iyah, it means to be oila regel, to go to the Beis Hamikdash. That's what it's referring to. And that's why a katan would be obligated in a certain stage of his life, depending on what level of child he is. But at some stage of katan, he would be obligated in bringing in going up to be oila regel. In the end of the Mishnah, it's very clear that it has to mean the carbon. It compares the re'iyah to the chagiga. These are two sacrifices. So and it's talking about the value of them. So it has to be talking about a sacrifice in the end of the Mishnah. But the beginning of the Mishnah has to be talking about being oila regel. So even though it uses the same word, re'iyah, but re'iyah could mean both, and that's how Rashi translates it in our Mishnah. Now, Tosfos, based on numerous sources, wants to say that re'iyah in the beginning of the Mishnah does mean both. And even though you're going to ask the question, what about the katan issue? What about a child bringing a carbon? How would a child be obligated in bringing a carbon? Tosfos says, you know what? A child does bring a carbon. He would bring it, not on Yom Tov. He would have to bring it on Chol Hamoed. He wouldn't be able to bring it on Yom Tov. That would be a prohibition of bringing a sacrifice on Yom Tov. He doesn't do smicha on the carbon, which is leaning, a certain part of the sacrifice that the child doesn't do. But a child would bring a sacrifice. It would be called a nedava. Neder or nedava, it would be like a gift sacrifice, similar to the oilas re'iyah. So he would bring a sacrifice, and the Mishnah gives us a stage when is a child obligated in bringing that sacrifice. So it's talking about being oila regel, going up to Beis Hamikdash, going up to the Beis Hamikdash for the holidays, and it's also talking about bringing a carbon, the carbon oilas re'iyah. But in the case of a katan, it wouldn't actually be the obligatory carbon that we bring on the first day of Yom Tov, but rather it would be the carbon that would be for him. It would be slightly different. It would be a gift carbon that would be on Chol Hamoed, and there would not be smicha done, so on. And so that's how Tosfos learns, and that would be the Machlekes Rashi and Tosfos. Now, I should also mention that the Yerushalmi takes the other extreme view. In other words, Rashi has one extreme view that it only means going up to be Oila Regel, to go to the Beis HaMikdash. That's what our Mishnah is talking about. Tosfos says it means both. It means going up to the Beis HaMikdash and bringing the sacrifice called Re'iyah. The Yerushalmi says it means only bringing the sacrifice, and it doesn't mean at all going up to the Beis HaMikdash, because the Yerushalmi learns that women and children are obligated to go to the Beis HaMikdash for all of the three festivals. So the Yerushalmi actually does learn that way, because he says the Yerushalmi says you learn from Hakel, that just like Hakel, which is this year, this is the year of Hakel, that during the mitzvah of Hakel, who had to come? Anoshim, Noshim, V'taf, men, women, and children. They had to go to the Beis HaMikdash, and the king would read over there the all different parts from the book of Devarim, and they would be inspired and leave with Yirash. They would obtain some Yirash Shamayim, Yiras Hashem, and so the mitzvah of Hakel, we learn from there. There is a limud, the teaching that teaches you that similar laws applied from Hakel to the law of going 3 times a year to the Beis HaMikdash. And so Re'iyah, that we learn a comparison from Hakel to being Oila Regel. Yerushalmi says that means that men, women, and children have to go. So our Mishnah says you accept the Chever Sheitav Kotan Noshim, it excludes many people. Our Mishnah is not talking about Oila Regel. Our Mishnah is only talking about bringing the sacrifice. These people are exempt from being the sacrifice, but they would be obligated in going to the Beis HaMikdash, and they would be obligated in going. And according to that, the whole place, everyone would basically pack out. According to the Yerushalmi, everyone had to pack out and leave and do a pilgrimage all the way to the Beis HaMikdash, men, women, and children. Okay, Zev, did you want to say something? We can't hear you. You're muted. Okay. You have to press unmute. You have to press a little button there that says, or it might be a red line over where it says mute. There might be a red line, and press it. On the bottom left, you probably have a button that says mute. It probably has a... Okay. All right. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to say back to Elkanah, I think they brought the Shmuel at age 2.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you said. So what about it seems like...
he must have come on his father's shoulder. I don't know.
No, but you're saying according to the Yerushalmi, everyone has to come for the Oila Regel. You're exempt if you're only exempt from the carbon, but everyone comes to be Oila Regel.
Yeah.
We'll have to see if there's other exemptions. Okay. So we're gonna, yes.
But if they're coming and they're not bringing a korban, doesn't it say that you shouldn't show up empty-handed?
Right.
They brought a korban, but Shmuel didn't.
So what it would seem is that the obligation of v'lo yero fanai rekom only applies to those that it applies to. In other words, these people are exempt from v'lo yero fanai rekom. You shouldn't see my face empty-handed. So these people have that exemption. They have this exemption of v'lo yero fanai rekom. Now, Tosfos interestingly mentions that even though our Mishnah exempted a number of cases from either being Oila Regel or from both Oila Regel and bringing the carbon, there are more cases as well. And Taisa says that you do sometimes find that it says exclude some, but it does leave some out. It's not giving everything. But Taisa says you could also say here that our Mishnah is specifically talking about certain scenarios, certain cases that it's exempting. It does not exempt these scenarios that it exempts are people that are exempt intrinsically from the mitzvah. In other words, it's not because of something external about them. It's from something physical about them, something internal about them that causes them to be exempt. But there are other cases where they would be exempt. For example, someone who is deals with very dirty things, so he has a smell and disgusting, and so he is exempt from coming zamius. It's like disgusting. So he would be exempt from from this mitzvah. Now, it doesn't give that example because he's not exempt because of who he is, because he's a woman, because he's a this, because he's not exempt because he's a child. He's not exempt for these reasons. He's a cheresh, shaita. He's not exempt because his essence is. He's exempt because of something that he does about him. In other words, that causes him. Someone doesn't own ground. According to Tosfos, Tosfos says this is la halacha, that you have to own land in order to be chayiv. He doesn't own. Not owning land is not something intrinsic about you, something external about you. So those are cases that the Mishnah doesn't mention because they happen to be exempt from going to the base of English, but it's not that the person is exempt. It's that what they do or something about them. They don't own land. They have that type of person. They work in a very dirty field, which causes them to be disgusting. Therefore, they would be exempt. So these are not intrinsic exemptions. These are other outer exemptions, and therefore
Acquired.
What is it?
Acquired
exemptions. Okay, guess that's a legal term. Acquired exemption.
They got themselves. They had to do something to have that exemption.
Right. It's an acquired exemption, and therefore and that could be a reason why the Mishnah doesn't mention these.
A leather tanner.
A leather tanner, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Now, the Gemara that we learned yesterday, we started with the Gemara about Hakol, that the Mishnah says everyone is obligated in Re'iyah. And actually, let's start the Gemara inside. Hakol asuye mai. What is we're now on page 2a, right after the Mishnah. The big Gimel Mem means Gemara, stands for Gemara. It's about 12 lines from the top of the page. Hakol asuye mai. Why does it say Hakol? What is the word Hakol including? The Mishnah says Hakol chayavin b'riyah. Everyone is chayavin b'riyah. What's everyone? It's trying to emphasize that someone you might think is not exempt, is not obligated, is actually is obligated. Someone you think is not obligated, saying Hakol, everyone is chayav, even that person. So who would that person be? So the Gemara initially says,
Rabbi.
yeah, there's some noise here. One step. Is that what you want?
Oh, maybe. No, my Gemara doesn't say Hakol.
What does your Gemara say?
La tuye mai.
Interesting. So you have a Gimel Mem and it just says La Suye Mai.
Yes.
I think you might be able to get your $10 back. You caught them on a typo. Okay, well, it should say Hakol, I believe. I don't know that there's another. I don't see any other girsa here. Hakol La Suye Mai. The fact that it says Hakol La Suye Mai, what is it including? It includes a person who's a half a slave and half a free person. And we mentioned yesterday that could happen when a person is owned by two partners and one of the partners freed him. So the other partner would still own him, and that person would now be owned by two, would be owned only half. He's only a slave half of his life, because the slave only owns half of him, or half of his body is only owned by the slave, which basically ends up developing into a one-day arrangement, 1 day free, 1 day slave. Now, that person, it's unclear if he would be obligated in these mitzvahs of either being oil regel or bringing the korban. And the Gemara wants to say that maybe that's what the Mishnah means, that everyone is chayv and riyah, even this person who is a half a slave and half a free person. But that only fits according to the opinion that says that maybe such a person is obligated. But according to Ravina, that says a person who's a half a slave and half free person, pater min hariyah, he's exempt from riyah. So according to that, hakol asuyei mai, what would the word hakol include according to Ravina? So Ravina paskins, he holds that the half a slave, half a free person is exempt from riyah. So according to him, obviously he's not learning the Mishnah this way. Hakol, the fact that it says hakol, it includes that person. It can't. According to him, that person is exempt. So that the hakol, that everyone is obligated, obviously must be including someone else. Where it says la suye chiger b'yom rishon menespashit b'yom sheni, this must include someone who is a chiger, who is lame on the first day, and he is nespashit b'yom sheni, he is healed on the second day. So in such a person, you would think maybe would be exempt from the whole mitzvah of Re'iyah, going to be Oilo Regel or bringing the sacrifice or both, and you would think that he would be exempt. The Gemara said that the Mishnah tells us Hakol, that such a person is obligated to go, and meaning in the other days of Yom Tov, he would have to come and go be Oilo Regel. Hanichol Laman de Omar, Gemara says that goes good according to the opinion Kulan Tashlumen Zelozeh. All of these days of Yom Tov are mashlim each other. They could be fulfillment for the other day. In other words, you went the first day, you're fine. You fulfilled your obligation. You went the second day, you fulfilled your obligation that you could have had on the first day. You went the third day. All of them fulfill each other's obligation. So they're all tashlumen zelozeh. But according to the opinion, Kulan Tashlumen Derishon, that they're all fulfillment of the first day obligation, meaning the first day is the real obligation, and the other days are makeups for the first day. According to that opinion, so if a person was exempt on the first day, there's no need for a makeup. And that Mishnah, where the Mishnah that says everyone is obligated in Re'iyah, would not be able to include that guy and say, you have to come now on the second day of Yom Tov and bring him to be Oilo Regel. The Mishnah wouldn't be able to say that because that's not true. The person who's only obligated on the first day, and he was exempt on the first day, this guy, because he was lame. So on the second day, you're not going to tell him you have to come now because he only needs to do a makeup if he transgressed the first day. He was exempt on the first day. He does not need a makeup, according to this opinion. So the Gemara answers that la asuye, hakol asuye mai, la asuye suma, that it includes a blind person. Suma bi achas me'enav. He is blind in one of his eyes.
Rabbi,
yes.
if he's exempt from the first one and he doesn't have to bring any more, what about Pesach Sheni?
If he's exempt from the first, again, we're not talking about the korban pesach. We're talking about the korban oila, korban oilas re'iyah.
Oh, I thought it was any korban.
No,
You're saying
kulan tashlumen are talking about the korban oilas re'iyah, maybe the chagiga as well. But these are not they're not. It's not talking about a specific the korban pesach or any korbanis. No, it's all specifically these holiday. These two holiday mitzvahs. Yes, Mordechai, did you want to say something? Oh, okay. Okay, so the Gemara continues and says that Udaloikia. So the Mishnah is going to include Hakol, to include someone who's blind in one of his eyes. Udaloiki Aitana, and this does not fit with a certain Tana. The Tanya, we learned in a Bryce, so Yochanan ben Davoy Omer, that there's a Tana, one of the Tanoim's name was Yochanan ben Davoy, He said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Suma biachas me'enav patur min ariyah. He holds that a person who's blind in one eye, he's exempt. Shenemar, as it says, Yira Yeraya. That it says Yira, and we read it Yeraya. So the Gemara says that because this word could be read, is read differently than it's spelled, it has it means to teach us something, that you have to compare Yira and Yeraya. What is it gonna? How is it gonna compare these two words? So it says Kederach Shaba Lirois Kach Ba Lirois. The same way Hashem comes to see you, the Shekhinah comes to see you, so you are obligated to come and see the Shekhinah, see Hashem. Now, or I should say, to be seen by Hashem. That would be a better translation, more correct. The same way the Shekhinah comes to see you, lirois, kach ba lirois, you should also come to be seen by Hashem. Now, ma lirois b'shtei einov, just like when Hashem sees you, he sees you with both of his eyes, meaning completely. So, af lirois, also to be seen, is b'shtei einov, you should be seen with both of your eyes.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
I have a problem with this statement. You know, we always what?
It's okay. We get it. I'm not good with
Okay,
words either.
You know, we always do this with Hashem. Yeah,
Right.
we know he doesn't have eyes, etc. So why didn't they say something as simple as, you know, just as Hashem sees you completely, you know, you have to see him completely as well? And why even bring in eyes and two eyes and whatever? You know, it's problematic.
So the thing is that as you say yourself, we seem to use terms like this before. It's not the first time we're seeing, but it's not so simple to say that you're not being seen because you don't have both eyes. You get what I'm saying? Like, in other words, it needs to spell it out, because if it doesn't spell it out, then you're not really exempt, because Hashem sees you with both, so to speak, fully, and you are seen fully. So it has to spell it out and say, just like Hashem comes to see you with, both eyes, meaning fully, so you also are seen with both of your eyes. It has to like spell it out. Otherwise, one eye should seemingly be enough. You know, you are seen, or even no eyes, right? But the fact that Hashem sees you, you could see, you have eyes. So just like Hashem sees, it needs to spell it out. Otherwise, this is an extreme view. Rabbi Yochanan ben Davai, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, he's coming up with an extreme view that you're exempt just because you don't see with one eye. What do you mean? You have an eye, you can see. You're not called blind, But nevertheless, so he spells it out. Now, I will tell you this: that Taisvis doesn't really. What is that?
This is halacha.
It's halacha. Yeah, that what?
No, it says suma b'achad enaf patur min hariyah. It says stam. So that would be considered.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it is an extreme. It is an extreme statement that he needs to prove. In other words, it's not something that you would automatically come to. I don't mean if it's correct, if it's accepted in halacha or not. That I totally did not mean that. I meant that it's a chidush. It's an innovation to say that if someone's blind in one eye, that's blind. Then you would think such a person do you have any thought that such a person should be exempt just because they're blind in one eye? But this opinion says that it might be halacha, but it sounds like you're right. It sounds like it probably is there in the Rambam, but but nevertheless, he does have to prove it. He's got to prove it because it definitely is something that's not, you wouldn't automatically assume. And in fact, our Mishnah doesn't follow that, at least according to this answer. Our Mishnah says, "Hakol chayavin b'riyah," even someone who's obligated with, even someone who has only sight in one eye, he is obligated. So the Mishnah says it clarifies it, but definitely is something that you wouldn't automatically know. Even if it's not, I shouldn't say maybe it's so extreme, but it's something that needs to be stated, at least to be clarified. Such a law. That's not something that you would automatically know. So it spells it out. So I don't know if that satisfies you, but to me, it seems satisfactory. Ezra.
I guess it's just as Hashem sees you completely.
You need to be seen complete.
You need to be seen in this, in the same manner, and that means 2 eyes.
In a complete way, right? Something like that. So it spells it out, Now, Taisus is not satisfied with a different issue. He says, does Hashem come to see you? Isn't Hashem everywhere? Do you say the Shechina comes? Lo shayach bia gabe Shechina. Shebechol makom. The Shechina is in all places. The Shechina comes. Does it come to you? The Shechina is everywhere. So Taisus doesn't like this this way of reading it. He has a different twist on it. Taisus over here, and Taisus says you have to read it a little differently. It's Yera'eh Yira. That he switches it around. He has a second issue as well with it. That normally you do the Kri, the way it's read, should be the main way of understanding it, and then the way it's written should be secondary. And so the way I read it, the way the understanding of Rashi is that it's Yira Yera. You say the way it's spelled is Yira, and the way it's pronounced is Yera. Taisva says no, we do it the other way. Yera Yera in Kederach Shabbat. Leira'os, let me read it in the bottom of Taisus over here. Mal lirais v'shtei einav, just like lirais is with 2 eyes, that a person comes lehisrois l'fnei hamakim, he comes to be seen before Hashem with 2 eyes, the same way he comes to be seen with the 2 eyes of Hashem, so also the person comes lirais hamakim, a person comes to see. So in other words, that the coming is referring to the person. That the person both ways. The same way the person comes to be seen, the person comes to see, but not that the Shechina comes. So it ends up that you don't, according to Taisus, you don't have to say the Shechina comes. It's that the person is coming. The Shechina is everywhere. Hashem is here. Hashem is there. Hashem is everywhere. But the Shechina is everywhere. But you come to be seen, and you come to see. But that's the. But anyway, that's the 2 ways of reading it. We have Rashi's way of Yira Yera, the same way you come, the same way the Shechina comes, Lirois to see you, also Kachba Lirois, also you come to be seen with both, in other words, that you also have both of your eyes, you're complete. Ma Lirois b'shtei einav, af Lirois b'shtei einav, just like to see with both eyes, also to be seen with both eyes. So that is the opinion of Yechon ben Davai, but our Mishnah says Hakol chayavin b'reiyah. Everyone would be chayav in riyah, even such a person who's blind in one eye. So it would be machlokes. Our Mishnah would say that you're chayav in going to the Beis Hamikdash if you're blind in one eye. Yechon ben Davai, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, would say you're exempt. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say, but we learned that the Shechina is coming or being on us when there is a minyan. So you say it's everywhere. You can say the same thing about the minyan. It's everywhere. So why do you need a minyan for it?
That's a good question. So it would seem that the Shechina is everywhere, but it's revealed. When you have a minyan there, it becomes more revealed.
The same
That would
here,
be-
it becomes more revealed.
Yeah, but it says he comes, not becomes, comes. The Gemara used the term ba, which doesn't mean it becomes, it means he comes. So
Yeah.
Taisus isn't satisfied with that. Again, it's a little above my pay grade to talk about the Shechina, but we have some scholars over here. Maybe they have their thought on it.
Okay.
Maybe, but Salal, do you have an explanation? Ben's asking, good question. Salal, David, do you want to? Anyone want to say anything? Okay,
I
guess
think
not.
it's just a level of revelation. Hashem is every place, but he's in
Rabbi.
a more revealed place where there's 10.
Thank you, David. Okay,
Yeah.
Moshe.
The
Yes.
Shechina is more effective if you have two eyes because you see peripherally, and it's you really can even pick up vision behind you through both eyes as opposed to one. So there's a different Shechina associated with two eyes as opposed to one.
But you don't see the Shekhinah.
No, that's not a matter of seeing it. It's a matter of
Yeah, it's a matter of seeing.
it's another level. It's another level. You're picking it up through both eyes. Without one eye, you're not picking up the full picture.
Moshe, you're on a higher level than us, I think, but we don't see it.
I mean, this
But
is I've heard this-
maybe sounds good. I hope. That would be probably sounds good. Sounds good.
Well, that's why Hashem
Okay.
gave us two eyes, obviously.
Right.
I mean,
Why would the Shekhinah?
Okay. All right. Very good. So let's go back to the Gemara. V'iba yasema, and if you want, say so. The Gemara comes up with another answer to explain why the Mishnah says Hakol. Everyone is obligated in Re'iyah. What is that including? Everyone is obligated in Re'iyah must be including something. Who is it including? So we so far have these three explanations. We've got Chetzi Eved, Chetzi Ben Chayrin, half a slave and half a free person. We have person who is lame on the first day and is healed on the second day. And we have a person who's blind in one eye. So all of these cases, possibly, Mishnah is including them, including these people that they're obligated in Re'iyah. But then the Mishnah says that the Mishnah had a problem, of course, with the Gemara had a problem with the first way, Chetzi Eva Chetz Ben Chayrin, because of Ravina. And now the Gemara says that really we could say that it fits with Ravina as well. The Ibayas Ema la'olam kida amri me kara. And if you want, say that really, as we said earlier, kida amri me kara, as we said earlier in the beginning, this that you asked that doesn't fit with Ravina, because Ravina says Chatzi Eben Chatzi Ben Chayrin is exempt from Re'iyah. So how could you say that that's the meaning of Hakol Chayavin Be'Re'iyah? Everyone is obligated in Re'iyah when he says he's exempt from Re'iyah. Like Kasha, it's not a Kasha. Kan Commissioner Rishayna, Kan Commissioner Achrayna. There's a difference. Here it's like the Mishnah Rishayna, the first way before Beis Hillel changed their opinion. Kan Commissioner Achrayna, and here it's like the later way, the later teaching after Beis Hillel changed their mind. Now, many people think that rabbis never change their mind. They have their view. It's not so true. In the Talmud, you find that there's something called a Mishnah Rishayna, Mishnah Achrayna, that they might paskin one way for many years, and then something awakens them, makes them feel that, you know what, maybe we should paskin the other way. Maybe the other way is more correct, and they change their mind. That's part of learning Torah, is you sometimes think of things in one way, and the more you learn, the more you see, and the more you experience, and time goes on, and you start understanding things deeper and differently. And sometimes you'll come up with, no, I don't. You know what? I want to. I'm changing the way I always paskin. I'll give you an example. There were many people that followed the 72 minutes to be considered night. But then it was found many writings from an earlier period, the period of the Goinim, that they saw that the Goinim didn't follow this view of 72 minutes called Rabbeinu Tam. And they seem to follow a much earlier view of what is considered night, that you don't have to wait 72 minutes after sunset to be night. And so many of the Paiskim of that day, including the Alter Rebbe and including the Vilna Gaon, they both seem to switch maybe what was more common to follow, and they switched to the earlier time that 26 minutes or 25 minutes, 13 minutes, different opinion, different time, depends on where you are, also for how far from the equator, but much earlier time, how much after sunset you have to wait for a regular day Ma'ariv, maybe to be Machmer Shabbos a little later, but 72 minutes was not the, they found sources that to rely on a different opinion. Now, so the same thing here. We have the Beis Hillel. In our case, Beis Hillel initially felt one way, and then they changed their opinion, and they decided to follow a different view. And we'll learn more about it, Metz Hashem, tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Sei gesund.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.